Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Constein. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today let's talk about conflict management, conflict resolution, and writing about emotional systems. Now, this is one of those key concepts that will come back again and again, both in courses and in professional practice. How do people manage their emotions? Well, if it was an easy thing to get done in one lecture, we wouldn't have a whole class about that. So let's skip through the preliminaries. If you're new to the Writing Center, you can work with us through many different points of contact, including emailing us questions, browsing any of the many videos that we have of past webinars, such as this one. You can make appointments with us, all free of charge. You can make an asynchronous appointment where you send us a draft and we send you feedback via email. You can make a real-time appointment where you can ask questions back and forth in real time and see how things are done or formatted. And you can also find many write-ups on different topics on our website. To schedule an appointment, just go ahead and go to my.acu.edu under the links or the resources tab. You'll find a drop-down that has a entry for the Online Writing Center. Select that, and then you will see step-by-step instructions and a video telling you how to access our different resources. When you make an appointment, you can immediately submit a paper or come back anytime before that appointment time rolls around and use the links in the appointment form to upload your draft. We'll look at it and send you feedback generally within 24 hours. If you're signing up for this 4th of July weekend, it is the 4th of July weekend, but we'll certainly get feedback back to you in time to be able to peruse. If you are new to our webinar website, we do have an extensive archive with recordings going back years on different things, and it's sorted by the program and the course. So, for example, if you're in CONR 617, the course from which we're looking at a sample assignment today, you could go ahead and scroll down to find everything that we currently have available for that particular course. And we update that during the academic semester, so if a new webinar becomes available, we will add it to that tab. Some things you'll see me referring to: we have an APA course paper template that helps you do a lot of the formatting things easily and quickly, for your YouTube channel for watching our videos on the go, and the Online Writing Center blog. Our objectives today are going to be to start by looking at the no tears plan for paragraph writing before we look at the sample assignment from CONR 617. And then we're going to talk about how to integrate these two for the task in this assignment, which is writing about emotional systems. So, first of all, the no tears plan is a scheme for paragraph writing and planning that is designed for the graduate and professional writer. You may be familiar with the meal plan that was developed at Vanderbilt University for their first-year freshman writing program. And that is many things, but it is not quite at the level that we'd expect for, say, a master's student in one of our programs. So it's designed to help people build their argumentative writing skills, but want to go a bit beyond, hence the no tears plan. And there's a detailed write-up you can look at by clicking on that link, but we have a whole webinar about how to add analysis and synthesis, which are at the heart of the no tears plan. Whole webinar, the Beyond Summary webinar here, which I strongly recommend, especially if you've gotten feedbacks asking you to improve or strengthen your argument, if you've received feedback saying that your paragraphs don't flow, and other things like that. There's also a more topic-focused thing about how to apply that I recommend, the EDD in Progress, Synthesis and Consequences webinar. And the no tears plan itself, the mnemonic stands for nothing omitted. Topic sentence, where you state what the paragraph is writing about, what it's claiming. Evidence or argumentation, where you're supporting the claim made in your topic sentence. Analysis, when you discuss it and show how it connects to your topic. Repeat as necessary. Then synthesis is when you combine this together and just state, okay, what these mean. What's the overall thing? What's the big picture? How does it apply to your specific case? Like, what are the implications for it? Should we do it or not do it? Perhaps. And then sometimes you'll have a concluding or transitioning sentence where you finish your discussion, or we move on to the next phase of it if we have something that's going to take a couple paragraphs to discuss. Now, analysis and synthesis are key parts of critical writing, where if you are presenting information, it's more than just summarizing it. You want to interpret it and analyze it. Tell us, what does it mean and why? You could also understand it as ways of walking your reader through all the steps of your argument to show how you understand how the different pieces of evidence and argumentation fit together. In some styles of writing, this would be something that would be implied. In APA style, which values clarity and specificity, it must be written out. So, while it is certainly true that you will find things that will say basically, well, the reader is sufficiently intelligent, they'll figure out what we mean, they'll connect the dots. In APA style, you should not be doing that. You should be doing all the connecting the dots. Now, we could further understand the analysis as being where we discuss the evidence or argumentation, and often that's involving comparing things that may be compatible or may be in conflict. So here's an example of what it looks like if you don't have analysis. Research has shown that increased levels of self-awareness often result from self-leadership interventions in the workplace. We have a citation. Yeah, that's all just summary. According to Macedo 2018, the goals of self-leadership interventions should be explored further. Okay, that's relaying someone else's argument in summary fashion with the quote there, but it's not making any sense of that, showing how these things relate or what we should do with it. Now, if we added some analysis so to show some of the context, research has shown that increased levels of self-awareness often result from self-leadership interventions in the workplace. This aligns with my own experience after training I hosted for local business owners. So it's saying, yes, there is that author who said that, and that matches up with my own experience. Okay, great. According to Macedo, the goals of self-leadership interventions should be explored further. My research will add to existing literature on the effects of such interventions in business leadership training programs. So now we're getting a sense of, okay, Macedo said to do this, and so you're going to do that. Got some more examples here. In alignment with Ichike 2014 and Manual 2015 discovered that COPD patients responded positively to the treatment over 1 year. So in alignment with this saying to us that there is agreement here. There's no conflict. Their results are supporting themselves. Now compare that to the next one. Smith 2010 found that birth order and personality traits were connected. However, Smith's 2010 results are less likely to be generalizable due to the use of a small, homogeneous population of 11 siblings. Now, I don't know about you. I actually am from a family of 11 siblings, but I don't think that we're very typical in today's place and age in the United States. So if you think that that sounds like that might be cause to wonder how universal, how generalizable, how applicable this is to other situations, well, that's exactly what the analysis is supposed to point out, that there is some things that you might want to take a look at. So you might say that we are connecting the dots between the evidence, connecting it to the argument or the context, or perhaps saying why it's important, that we're answering the so what question. Now, synthesis is when you're discussing multiple pieces of evidence or argumentation, and we're trying to create new meanings, new conclusions based on the analysis or the relationships between these different points of data. And really that synthesis is something that you're expected to do, usually in your upper division undergrad courses and definitely in graduate level writing. Now, the function of the synthesis, it's often going to be to answer questions like, what do these things mean when put together? How do you, as the author, interpret what you presented? And what should be done in light of this stuff? Here's some examples of synthesis in action. These consistent results across multiple studies and diverse populations validate the applicability of the behavioral therapy model to this problem. Or, the recent research on the positive impact of mindfulness-based stress reduction training in various contexts means that it could also be an effective tool for higher education administration. And finally, a p-value less than 0.05 is typically considered to be statistically significant. Therefore, the null hypothesis was rejected. Okay, so there's this thing, contextualize it, and then tell us what it means. So the last sentence we have the summary and analysis together, the evidence analysis, followed by the synthesis. Okay, well, we rejected that because of those things. So let's take a look at CONR 617's Week 1 assignment. This is the Family as Emotional System paper. It's coming out of the Managing Conflict in Churches course, and starts with a brief preamble, which is just a reminder to read the readings for Module 1. Continue, we have the guideline for the length, 1,100 to 1,200 words, which is going to be roughly 4.5 to 5 pages. And you're supposed to have an introduction, discuss family as emotional system while doing some specific prompts and answering questions, change of topic to anxiety within the family system, where you're asked to evaluate the possible movement of anxiety, and then give recommendations about how families can deal with anxiety differently, or your assessment of how they might deal with anxiety differently. We also need to specifically demonstrate a master of the key concepts of Bowen theory, including differentiation of self, triangles, emotional cutoff, and family projection. So that's not saying that that list there is exhaustive, but those should definitely be there. And we need to answer the question, what role does each of these concepts play in a family system, and how are the emotional processes of family systems theory evidenced in society? And paper specs, the first one is create a cover page which has one particular detail that is not a core APA thing, that's including the word count on the cover page. It's easy to add. We call that a house rule because you're in my house, you follow my rules. So this is extra thing the professor is asking for this. Not a problem. Include a subheading for each prompt. Okay, great. And provide support from course materials or outside academic sources to support this. So you're going to need to be citing the course readings or other things that you identify. A minimum of 4 references, and then reiteration of the formatting things above. Now, if we look at the rubric for this assignment, we see that it is pretty much reiterating just the instructions saying, okay, do these things, here's the portion of credit going there. And we'll see that a fair portion of this, actually 20% of the grade, is going to, is it the right length? Have you followed the formatting instructions? Do you have the necessary citations and references? And does the writing communicate clearly? Does it follow basic standards for grammar and so forth? And there's a specific note saying papers without citations and a reference page will be returned for a rewrite with deductions taken for late submission. So they're serious about that minimum of 4 sources, so let's not disappoint. All right, so the next step, we're going to talk about how to apply the no tiers plan while drafting and outlining your assignment. Now, let's take a look before we dive into that at those key sources, because as you will recall, it does say here that you must have a minimum of 4 references. Now, it does happen that there are 4 references that are listed here in the course materials. And certainly, the one for this week's reading, the Gilbert book, you're going to want to cite that, I think, especially since it's about Bowen theory, which is a major topic of discussion for this paper. So how would we cite that one? Well, we start with the reference. So we collapse the first name into initial So Gilbert, comma, R period. Publication year, we go with the newest one for our purposes here, 2006. Then we have the title. Note that it's in italics, but it's also in sentence case, meaning capitalized the same way you capitalize things in a sentence. And in APA style, theory names are not capitalized, so Bowen, because that's a proper noun, that stays with the B capitalized, but theory, lowercase. And the subtitle, a new way of thinking about the individuals in the group, that's lowercase. No city and state, just that information you see before us. To cite it, Gilbert 2006 in these different versions. If you have a page range or page citation because you're quoting, you might have some of this information separated because the author date normally goes before the quote, and the page or page range numbers would go at the end after the quote. At this point, I invite you to, if you haven't already, grab a copy of the APA course paper template, because we're going to be using that and you'll want to follow along. So I have here a copy of our APA course paper template, and let's take a look at the rules again for how this should be formatted. So all papers in APA style should have a cover or title page, and it should have your name, your course number, the assignment title. But that word count, that's the house rule thing that I pointed out earlier, so let's go ahead and make sure we add that. Now the word count will usually go one of two places, either in the upper left hand corner or underneath this. And barring any other instructions, I would put it in the upper left hand corner. But I would also mark it to make sure that you actually put that in later. Mark it with the bright highlighter so that you know, hey, here's a cue, here's a reminder to go ahead and put in the word count before you submit this paper. Alright, now you can fill in the title later. APA style doesn't require that the titles be very original, but descriptive, specific, and concise, yes. So I'm just going to go ahead and take out this placeholder text that shows you how some of the formatting looks. And we'll also take out the placeholder references here, because they're just here to show you how, again, those things should look. Alright, so given that you have 8 chapters of reading from the course text, it seems prudent to be citing it, especially about Bowen theory, so we need to get this in our references area. Now, do remember that in APA style, every work that is in the references list should normally be cited in the body of the paper and vice versa. So you can't just put it here, you need to also put it here and cite it in the body of your document. So let's go ahead and now add the instructions for this assignment, so we can use them as the basis for the working outline. Now let's go ahead and cross off everything that's standard expectation for the papers to really focus attention. So double spacing, yeah, should always be doing that in APA style. 12-point Times New Roman font, always be doing that with our template here. There's this note here, do not quote the sources, so make sure you don't have any direct quotations in here. You can certainly paraphrase and summarize, but make sure you have the citations and references for that. So by crossing these off, we can visually focus attention more clearly on what remains. And so now we have this note here. Okay, have a subheading for each prompt. So let's look at this. So okay, introduction. You won't have a heading there because in APA style you should not have a heading called introduction starting your paper. But you should still be introducing the thesis or main idea, outlining the major content of the paper, it's basically laying out in the order that you will be discussing it, what's in this paper. So, list those things in the order that you discuss them, and you can tell from the rest of the outline where that is. And then, now we need some headings. So there are a couple ways you might do that. One of them is to just select this and add the first heading level, and then reformat that to meet the requirements for a title case. And if you do that, well, that we're fulfilling part of the instructions immediately. Can you change these to something else? Yes, but it's helpful to show that you're doing exactly what you are being asked to do. Now here, this is a pretty long sentence to use as a heading. So if you go ahead and use this focus here, key concepts of Bowen theory, now we have a better idea of how this all fits together. And then conclusion. The conclusion would actually have a heading, unlike the introduction, because now it's telling us we're wrapping up the argument. Now, here, there may be more things that you talk about, but this sentence is telling us these are key concepts, so might as well go ahead and list them here. And you can leave yourself a note to add others, and because you're asked to define each concept, then you should also be discussing this. Now, if you're wondering, can I combine the definition with the role? Yes, you could. It's certainly possible to do that. Just make sure you account for these things accordingly. So if you add the discussion of the role to this one here, right after you're defining it, make sure you cross it off here so you are keeping track and not repeating things unnecessarily, or forgetting to mention something because you weren't tracking it so clearly. Now, if we are looking through this, we see, okay, we've taken care of those. Reminder, keep that. Reminder to get that. And if we're looking at it now, we see, okay, well, roughly how much space is this going to take? And we saw earlier that the specification of 1,100 to 1,200 words is going to be roughly 4.5 to 5 pages. And that's something where we see, okay, all right, so we've got the introductory paragraph here, the one that doesn't have a heading because it's the start of the paper. All right, so that's going to be a shorter paragraph. Looking at this, this could be longer. Let's look at the next. This could be long. Key concepts. So this is going to be at least a good 2 paragraphs. And then the last prompt here, so let's say 3, for conclusion 5. So now we're talking something where these sections, just based on the rest of the length, and for that matter, based on the rubric, if we now look at this here, we see that this is actually seems to be dividing it into sections where this definition and describing the family as an emotional system using the theory, that should be a bit longer. And if you are doing the key concepts, there's also more space given there, so it should be longer. And then the application paragraphs seem like that'll probably be 1 paragraph, whereas the paper defines a family, paper demonstrates mastery, that's probably going to be at least 2 paragraphs. And, you know, if we're looking at that, if the standard paragraph is going to be roughly 5 to 7 sentences each, that's going to be putting us right in the ballpark of the paper assignment guidelines before we start looking at anything else that you might add. So because it's putting us right in the ballpark, you want to make sure that you do all the things that are required first and then expand as space permits, or elaborate as space permits. But looking at the length of the things you're being asked to do, looking at the distribution of points, it should be a very short introduction, a very short conclusion to the point, and the other things should be distributed accordingly. All right, I think that's all the time we have for today's webinar. But if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to send us a question at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu, schedule appointment, or check out our website for other resources. Have a good night.